What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fightful MMA podcast. I am absolutely pleased and super happy to be joined by Elias Theodorou, someone I've known for a very, very long time. Elias, are you dressed for the occasion? Like, what's going on here?
Yes, a little overdressed or underdressed, but I'm doing a promo / commercial for a sponsor, HBN, and we're basically showing a little bit of the fast life and what one gets when they achieve that next level, just like the supplements.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Nice little plug there. Now, for those that were wondering from yesterday's podcast and today's podcast, just so you know, we are having a slight bit of internet issues. We apologize for the lagging, sometimes losing some of the audio. It is work in progress. We are aiming to fix it. I tried to get it fixed today. Unfortunately, the technicians weren't able to come out in time. They may be coming out tomorrow, so moving forward, we shouldn't see a problem. And of course, with Elias, we have no idea where he's going to be every week. He is scheduled to join me at least every Tuesday. I would say removal of fight week. That all depends on his schedule. But how's training been going thus far? You're taking on Cesar Ferreira next.
Yeah, no, training's going great. And I will have the mental fortitude and the space to basically chat during fight week too. Don't worry. Whether I'm fighting or not, I'll be there on Tuesday.
Well, you know how I am. Yeah, you've known me long enough. I don't like bothering anybody during fight week, especially during the weight cut. But Tuesday is sort of early. You don't have to make weight till Friday. So we'll see how that goes. But in terms of, well, first of all, where are you right now?
I'm in LA. Well, actually, technically, Orange. Pardon? Newport Beach. There you go. Where am I, really? But a beautiful house that, like I said, is going to show basically, it's going to be our take, HBN's take on on almost like the Old Spice aspect. So I'm going to be basically recreating my own Old Spice guy.
That is absolutely fantastic. I don't even want to think where you're going to go with all the stuff there because, you know, and I say this with all compliments. For those that know me and know Elias, when I say the word disaster, it's actually a compliment. And Elias and I have been known to be somewhat disasters in public in a good way. Right, Elias?
In the best of ways. In the best of ways. As long as there's no proof later on.
Remove any and all form of evidence. All right, let's
Exactly.
quickly. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to get to that I actually spoke with yesterday on the podcast. But to get your take from a fighter perspective, I want to get your thoughts on a variety of issues. But first things first, I want to go back to your Sam Alvey fight before we get into some of the other stuff regarding the world of mixed martial arts. I always ask the same question to a lot of the athletes: win or lose, there's always a lesson to be learned whenever you compete in mixed martial arts, specifically in the high stage that is the octagon. From that Sam Alvey fight, any lessons learned from that bout?
For sure. Well, bringing it even more back, essentially it was my first fight since the only blemish on my record. So there was a lot of, essentially regrouping in some regard, because not only when you win, but when you lose, you have to go back to the drawing board. And what I was able to kind of learn from it was not to hold on to the same things that I was with Santos. But I think in many words, that kind of didn't allow me to go on the offensive as much as I wanted to. I was so much stronger than Sam. There are many points, I think, when I was on the case specifically, I should have just bent him with a tie and just kneed him in the face 10 times. I think I was too focused on not making mistakes rather than just being me and having fun. And that's what I'm excited to do with Cesar. I think now that I got back to my winning ways and I don't have a loss to come off of, I can be me and have fun and be a little balanced.
Now, you mentioned having fun. You often smile during fights. You are focused, and you and I have discussed at length. I don't remember which fight it was, but there was a concern I had for you in the first round of a fight, and you put your hand on my shoulder and you said, just feeling out the process, bro, just feeling out the distance. I thought you were starting off slow. Is that something that changes as you compete in mixed martial arts, or is that something that's standard, or is it situation by situation in terms of, you know what, it'll take me a minute to feel out the range and the distance with this guy. It could take 4 minutes.
Exactly. No, I think the latter. I think in many ways what it is every fighter's different and every fight's different. That's the amazing part of mixed martial arts. Styles makes fights. So if Sam specifically, he's a counterpuncher, and he was trying to essentially have me just run right into his fist, and which wouldn't be the smartest thing in my aspect. So I think I just outsmarted him. It was chess, not checkers. I outstruck him 250, 260 to 40. So it takes two to dance, and I'm the phenomenal dancer, and his hips are a little tight.
Do we want to get into how you dance or no?
Oh, I told you, I'm a phenomenal dancer. 2 years jazz, 3 years tap. You can learn anything on YouTube.
Yes, well, I was going to say now. I remember when I first spoke to Paige Van Zandt, and a lot of the even Sarah Kaufman. I mean, people that have had a dance background, and even George St. Pierre talks about gymnastics. There's so many things outside of mixed martial arts that you can bring in to MMA. In terms of, I mean, I remember when I used to deal with a lot of boxers, especially the Latino boxers that would put their headphones on and you'd see them shadow boxing, but they'd be more, almost salsa shadow boxing.
Yeah.
That you got to think about this for a second. That brings a lot to your rhythm.
For sure. That's exactly what I was going to say. Rhythm. It's in many ways, that's what a fight is. It's an aggressive dance, and whoever leads wins. And in this sport, you got to be selfish. You got to do you. And if you are constantly putting out your rhythm, and my rhythm's very, very awkward and non-traditional in a sense, and so is Caesar's. He has a capoeira background, but I would say that he's actually moved away from that because, again, he has a couple of knockouts on his regard. Like, he's been knocked out. He's been caught in wild exchanges. And I think him now being an MMA master, he's tightening it up, and he's being a little bit more of a boxer who's going to try and go do a blast double and put me on my back and try and submit me. But at the same time, he's on a 3-fight win streak, but the people that he has fought, I think, are tuna cans on the ground.
All right, then. And I'm assuming you don't think tuna can on the ground.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not a tuna can. I'm premium tuna, I guess.
High grade, caught right in the middle of the ocean, deep water. I got you. I got you. One last thing about rhythm, and this is a conversation I had with Faraz about a year ago. He said it's not just, well, two things. George told me that if you could set the rhythm and the pace, the opponent's going to get tired because he's not working with his heart rate. He's working with your heart rate. Second thing, Faraz said, when it comes to rhythm, you have the 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. You got to be somewhere in between there. Does that make sense?
For sure, and you got to break the rhythm too. If you're constantly going, your opponent is going to have to think and react, rather than if it's more of a natural thing and you're able to be the dominant one and you're putting things out there and your opponent has to react. So I think that was kind of the mistake I did in the third round of my only loss with Santos. I was a little bit following him and trying to force something rather than just being me.
Got to ask you something about your life in general, especially with the shoot that you're doing right now. You've labeled yourself, rightfully so, as a video vixen. You've been in music videos. You've done modeling. You've done a whole bunch of stuff. How do you keep it all under wraps in terms of how do you keep everything aligned on your schedule? Because you're still a professional fighter. You still got to get your training in. You still got to get your camps in. You still got to travel. You still got to get, the proper rest. How do you balance it all? Is there a secret that you have, or is it just time management?
That exactly that point is time management. It's having a schedule, and obviously there's an A, B, and C. Nothing's perfect, but again, before I came out here for the 3 days that I'll be in California, I had a very good week out and try to partners one behind me. And you don't necessarily have to be 100% or to go every single day. You can have it around small threes to get to your done. And then go back for another 2 weeks in Montreal and do the same thing. And there's 24 hours in a day, and
we apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for Elias's internet connection right now. There are some issues getting his answer. We'll see if we can either move around or probably reconnect. But other than that, Elias, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Better.
Can you hear me?
That's better.
Cool.
Yep, I can hear you. Your last answer was sort of almost choppy, but we got the gist of it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say was, again, there's 24 hours in a day, and as long as you have the right time management, you can put it around. I think the one thing that everyone was slanting on Ronda for, in the idea that she didn't have, let's say, the focus on that one thing, I think that's not necessarily the case. If you put the work in, there's 24 hours in the day to accomplish many other things.
In terms of Ronda Rousey, and she put a post up on her Instagram yesterday talking about being, her new foundation is now being set at rock bottom, and now she has nowhere to go but up. And I definitely agree with that. I mean, you have to go through some adversity in life to really understand where you're at. If you could get into the ear of Ronda Rousey, what would you tell her?
I think in many ways, one of the criticism that everyone's now jumping on is the idea that she might be in a camp that does not have where, like, again, she's surrounded in possibly around a couple of yes men and yes women that are telling her that she's perfect in all areas of mixed martial artists, telling her that she's a champion boxer, if you will, when no, you are a specialist. You are Ronda Rousey. You are Armbar Nation. Get back to your roots. If anything, I would tell her to learn how to what's called some level changes and start taking people down. Like, again, what you saw was her walking right into Amanda Nunes's game plan and walking right into those punches. Where was your level change? Where were your angles? And I don't know, you're for like many different weapons that you should be using. Where are your elbows? Where are your kicks? Even if, again, one of the rumors is that she has bad knees, but even though digressing the fact that she's had surgery and she's fixed it up, but there's oblique kicks. Like there's many different ways to skin a cat. And I think she was told that she's this cream of the crop and everything when no, you're a specialist. You're a judo practitioner, and that's what got you to the limelight that you were. You were ferocious at taking any inch that someone gave you and taking an arm home with it.
There is a saying in mixed martial arts that 90% of this game from a fighter's perspective is mental. Do you think Ronda's issue right now is far more mental than it is physical, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. Obviously, she didn't look like she necessarily wanted to be there. Well, few do when they could. But at the same time, count your blessings. She made $62,000 a second. And I know it's not all about money, but I know a lot of fighters that would kill to be in that position.
You once told me that there's fighters out there, and no names, obviously. We're not going to mention any names, but there's an adage out there that I'm trying to remember exactly how you worded it. It's people want to have the life of a fighter, but they're not really a fighter when they're in the octagon.
Well, yeah. Well, some people are terrified of, some fighters are terrified of fighting. They love the ability to train, learn, grow, the lifestyle that goes with it. But they want to finish it as much as possible, as quick as possible, rather. Whereas someone like myself, I don't mind when it goes 3 rounds because I've worked so damn hard, and I would love to show everyone what I've been working on. I would love every second under those bright lights.
Now, I haven't traveled so much like you have, especially training in so many different places, especially TriStar Montreal and just all over the place. And the one thing I've learned is, over my years, and I've been in this game for almost 20 years, I can pick out a true fighter. And when I say a true fighter, a fighter that's like being in the octagon is an actual joke. On the street, if he needs to go or she needs to go, it's going to happen. And I'll never forget one true fighter. I mean, you and I have been to clubs, have been to bars, and we're relatively calm. There's never an issue whenever we go out. But and I remember being around Renzo Gracie and Frankie Edgar. Those are real fighters when I say like Diaz brothers and stuff like that. Is that something you can catch when you see someone in public and or when you see an opponent? It's like, yeah, you know what? This guy's not here for show. This guy's ready to rumble.
Well, for sure. Thiago Santos would be a perfect example. He was, I believe, a Brazilian operation police. He was one of those, or a parachuter. I can't remember. Like, again, and also the fact of someone that comes up from, humble beginnings in the idea like a Diaz or other people from Brazil that are coming, maybe, let's say, from the favelas. And they're fighting for every single meal. And you throw in the fact someone that may have children, and that's each fight is what they're using to basically put food on the table of their kids. That's something I can't compete with in that regard. Like, but at the same time, I can have fun in there, and when I do have fun, it shows.
Yeah, so you basically took the next point out of my mouth, and thank you very much for the
There you go.
segue. What do you say? What do you say to clowns like me and everyone else that kind of supports you, that gets so nervous when you're in the octagon and thinking, "Oh my goodness, what's he doing? No, 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 don't do that! Oh my God!" But you're having fun. Meanwhile, we'd be so like not tripping out in there, because if you've trained enough, you know what you're doing. You're going to be fine in all situations. But what do you say to people that are watching your fights that get nervous, but it's like you're having fun, and we can't understand how you could possibly be having fun with somebody who's who's across the octagon with you, who's trained just as hard to knock you out or submit you.
No, true. Well, how do you think my mom feels? She says every fight like this and ends it like that. But the real thing is, I have the same aspect when I see my training partners. It's not you in there, so you're not able to move around on the buttons, and especially when you throw in my style, where it's not necessarily the most traditional. And I do think out of the box, and again, big risk, big reward, and maybe we'll see a little bit of that February 19th.
I saw some of your posts on Instagram regarding your mother. I think your mother and I are what are we due for sharing a bottle of wine soon, or something? What's going on here? Because I think I missed her birthday.
Oh yes, yes, December 19th, or it's December 14th rather.
How did everything go? How's she doing, by the way?
She's great. Her and my pops actually just recently retired, so they're just kind of fixing up the house, doing some traveling, and no complaints.
They're fixing the house. You need to get your ass from LA and get home to help fix that house, man.
No, if you knew my mom the way I do in that regards, that she's so OCD, even the help that I would get, she would just, nope, you're doing it wrong, and just move me out of the way. I've tried. I'm basically hired labor in regards to moving heavy things, and that's about it.
For those that don't know, Elias had a fight recently, or maybe 2 or 3 fights ago, I should say, and we went out a team dinner sort of thing. And as soon as I walked in there, it was his mom, not the brother, not your dad. It was his mom that basically escorted me over to my seat and made sure I had everything there for me, and was talking to me left, right, and center. I said, Elias, I got nothing to say to you. Just go talk to the people. I'm hanging out with your mom. Get us some wine, and we're going to chill here.
Yeah, she's cool. She's cool peoples.
Absolutely. All right. Let's Meryl Streep. Okay, she kind of rocked the world with some of the statements she made at the Golden Globes. I really wasn't affected by it. I mean, it wasn't that I couldn't care less about what she said, because I've heard the arguments and the the disparaging remarks about mixed martial arts for a very long time. It didn't bother me. I looked at it, I read it, I then watched the video. Didn't bother me whatsoever. Your thoughts on the matter?
She's a 70-year-old woman. Like, she's not our market. Like, of course she's not going to look at it as if she as an art. Like, she is a trained Juilliard theater actor. Of course she doesn't look at mixed martial arts. The greater point that she was trying to say is more or less that again, violence begots violence, and just the way necessarily that someone like Trump, who she was alluding to, in many ways puts out an energy, and energy comes back. So she was just trying to say that there needs to be a more positive aspect. So let's move on from the 70-year-old woman that doesn't like mixed martial arts.
And we're going to move on now to the new rules of mixed martial arts in 2017. John McCarthy put out a fantastic video, more or less not necessarily talking to the fans and the media out there, but more or less addressing the referees and the judges in mixed martial arts. Have you had a chance to see that video?
No, I haven't had a chance, but I'm definitely going to look at it right after this.
So in essence, what he talked about are the different rules, and one of them being obviously that loophole that many fighters found, that when they're caught in the clinch or against the cage, they're able to protect themselves by putting their hand on the mat to avoid getting knees or kicks to the head. That is basically going to be abolished now. You are no longer going to be considered a downed fighter. Do you like this change?
Sir. No, yeah. I do like it in the sense that in many ways it was a game of cat and mouse, and this kind of removes it. You got to be able to protect yourself at all times, and it includes when you have one hand on the ground playing, like I said, cat and mouse.
Can it make you more aggressive as a fighter? I know you like to use your distance, and you like, especially with the kicks and the shins and stuff like that, but in a situation like that, how do you go back to relearning that, hey, you know what, if the guy puts his hand on the ground, I can keep going. I don't necessarily have to stop, because there's going to be a transition.
Especially with knees. It's one of those things where if you're in a dominant position with, let's say, a chin pick or anything like that against the cage, which, like you said, I like, and even in regards to the cage and just, bending someone over and just tie plumbing them to death. Not technically, but what I'm trying to say is essentially it allows you just more options, and more options is always good.
Another one of the fouls that are now going to be instilled in mixed martial arts that he spoke to with the referees specifically was to understand that a fighter can no longer extend his hand out with open fingers towards another fighter's face, obviously protecting the eyes, getting rid of eye pokes. And I do understand why a lot of fighters do that, especially for range and distance. But it's now going to be a warning, and you could get a point taken away. I think that's, in my opinion, it's a midterm solution or a short-term solution to what I think needs to happen is the changing of gloves. I've seen some really good prototypes that do not hinder a striker, do not hinder any grapplers that are heavier on the submission side of the game. But do you think this is a better rule now, or a situation where, you know what, fouls and warnings need to take place, obviously, to protect your eyes?
100%. Like you said, it's the beginning of the next step, which would definitely be the changing gloves. But I think more points should be taken if someone actually pokes them in the eye. I think again, if there is control, then there's no need to necessarily warn someone. If it is a poke to the eye, then there's your point. That should be the rule. I'm someone that definitely parries. I grab the hands and I play with it because I'm waiting for a reaction of my opponent. And John McCarthy was yelling at me the whole time with my fight with Sam, and it was really throwing me off. And I didn't necessarily get to gauge the distance because I have John yelling at me the whole time. But I understand the point, and especially when fighters do get poked in the eye. But it's this weird thing where, again, it's the variance of the fact that it could be a potential foul. There's a potential of something will go wrong happening. If you have your hands out and no one gets poked in the eye, then issue.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I know that you're basically going to be allowed. You can't have it fully extended out. You can have your hand up. I don't like having the idea of having your hand up because it tenses up your forearm and your elbow, and it could potentially mess with your footwork or what you're actually trying to do. Whereas if you're just keeping your paw out, your elbows kind of turned over, which should make things easier. Is this something that you'd probably have to look at when you're training now, or does it really even matter for your style in general?
For sure. I'm going to have to start having my hand out like this. If it's like this, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Pretty much. There you go. The change,
sound effects included.
Yes, I think there are buttons here for sound effects. I'm too new to this situation to start putting in some sound effects.
So pumped about that.
Oh my god,
so pumped.
It's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. I already know our future is going to be ugly.
This feels right.
In terms of the actual judging now, and I think this is long overdue. It's about time they're going to be looking at fighting in this manner. It's no longer about the quantity, but more or less the quality, i.e. you could throw 5 or 6 punch combination, but if the other fighter ends up landing a beautiful right cross or a left hook in that exchange, he wins that exchange, then the momentum of the fight or the round is now swayed over in his favor. So it's no longer just about throwing strikes, it's about the quality that's landed. And that's how judges are basically going to be looking at it. And I think the same thing should be taken into consideration for submissions. If a guy has got a triangle choke on, whether it's on or not, the fighter is defending. His opponent is defending. Therefore, in that time frame, in that round, he spent the majority of time defending. That round now has to go to the fighter that at least had the submission. The whole point of mixed martial arts being an aggressive sport is what? To finish your opponent. Am I wrong in this?
Yeah. No, I think very much right, especially with the submission attempts, because that gives the benefit to someone that's maybe on the bottom the whole time, but they're the one that's on the attack. So I totally agree on that part. The difficult aspect will be perspective on, again, when you put a fight into the hands of the judges, it's all under perspective or perception. It still falls under the judge's discretion of what they feel. I think the bigger issue is just an overhaul in regards to some judges that need more information about mixed martial arts. I think whether they know it, like whether those rules are in place, it depends on whether the judge knows what's actually going on.
And this goes back to something that I've been preaching about for a very long time, and I'm talking like way back in when I was with Sportsnet and we were doing all the features and stuff like that. Specifically, having a camera follow me around when I got my the referee certificate from Big John McCarthy and the my judging certificate, and what that actually entails when you go through that course. Do you think it should be mandatory by the Association of Boxing Commissions to tell their commissions that, you know what, you cannot have anybody enter a cage or a ring or sit cage side or ringside unless they're certified under one of the courses that are offered, or at least allowed by the ABC to say, hey, you know what, you actually know what you're talking about here?
Yep, some kind of test. Like John McCarthy, like you said, has had something for years, and he's in many ways the gold standard of refereeing. He's a great, even with the joking aside of him yelling at me my last fight, he's still the golden standard in many regards of mixed martial arts in reffing and in judging. So I think there needs to be some kind of knowledge, a set base of what someone needs to know. Like you can't just know boxing. How are you gonna judge a mixed martial arts bout if you don't know what's going on the ground? If you're saying, oh, he just kind of held him for a while, but do you not know that he was going for an arm choke, like a head and arm choke? Like you need to know the difference. You need to know what's happening.
Unfortunately, that is such a fact that has just been disregarded in mixed martial arts for the longest of time. I know there's changes happening. California is one of the best. Vegas is changing.
Yep.
There are changes being made. I know in Ontario, believe it or not, a province that you and I live in, we can barely get any mixed martial arts events taking place unless it's actually under the UFC banner. They only basically allow, to my understanding, judges and referees that have been certified under Big John's course or Herb Dean's course. So.
Yep.
Weird that you can't have mixed martial arts events, but when you do, you get the best of the best out there. So it is what it is. Do you ever
pros and cons to everything?
Yes, exactly. Now, whenever you get to the arena for your fights, do you pay attention to who the referee is or any of the judges, or is it just passe and it's like, you know what, I have a job to do? Or does that play in your mind at all?
Well, there's certain judges or certain referees that are more obviously more excitement in regards to when you have Big John. Obviously, that alone in itself is something awesome. Like he is one of those individuals that you always look to. But with that being said, I have a job and I need to put on a pace and put on a performance that even when it's left in the judges, there's no issue of who's going to win. We know the Spartan.
2016 was an interesting year for mixed martial arts. There was a lot of talk of who was the fighter of the year, who was at the top of the echelon, what's going to happen in 2017. 2016, for me, when you take a look at what was done, you can make the argument for a lot of different fighters, and it generally happens in the championship bouts. For me, it was Conor McGregor because he was the first time ever a guy that won 2 titles in 2 separate divisions. There's obviously recency bias with Cody Garbrandt doing what he did to the previously unbelievable pound for pound, one of the pound for pound best in Dominic Cruz. I mean, Demetrius Johnson continued being the best at what he does. Michael Bisping, a guy in your division, the champion in your division, doing what he did. But if you had to give out a vote, the Spartan fighter of 2016, who would that be?
For storyline, I would say Bisping. Like again, 10 years, always being clean, having such major setbacks where he's been so close. And then, I had a meeting last time. I had a lunch with him last time I was here in California, where it seemed in many ways he was already looking at that next chapter of his life in regards to movies and all that. And then a week later, he gets the call. So there's that, obviously, in my bias and my little love for him. In regards to that. But I think obviously Conor McGregor, and you have to put in the fact that with Ronda losing, he has all the bargaining chips moving forward into 2017. He has all the options. So again, the winner, the fighter of the year is definitely Conor McGregor with all of the options.
2017, we're probably going to see the return of George St. Pierre. Do you think it happens before summertime or at all?
Or at all. That's the interesting thing. Again, especially with the new development on what he's trying to pursue in regards to a fighter association. And again, in many ways, that they're also the backdrop of what the real issue is. It's 2 competing agencies in many ways beefing it out on the 2 Hollywood agencies trying to beef it out in regards to this once niche market niche sport that now has a price tag of the 4.2 billion that everyone sees. I think George should do whatever he feels right, but at the same time, I think in many ways, no one retires on top and no one walks away in the sunset. I think there's something very impressive about that. But he's training. I can vouch that he's training at TriStar. He's in shape as always, and he still has that hunger. It's not necessarily about money, but again, it's all about the money.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw my interview with him at the Gentleman's Expo, which I didn't see you at, by the way. Were you in town for the Gentleman's Expo?
No, I wasn't. I was actually supposed to be a part of it, but it never worked out.
All right. Well, hopefully next year, because I mean that event is absolutely fantastic, and all you guys out there and ladies, if you ever decide to ever go to the Gentleman's Expo, you better be dressed up. You better be looking good, because you don't want to just show up there in jeans and a t-shirt, unless you're Elias, because he can get away with it.
I'll just roll up in this robe again.
I was gonna say, now what kind of robe is that? Because I hate to break it to you, but it's kind of reminding me of the Octagon Girl robe.
Whatever, I pull it off. I have the hair for the Octagon robe either way. Whether this is a robe for Hugh Hefner style or what's it called, Octagon Girl, I can pull it off.
It's all good. I had to throw it out there because I know you're going to make a shot. You got the best hair in MMA, and we all know I'm follically challenged. So here's your opportunity if you want to take a shot at me again.
No, I'll just kiss your beautiful bald head when I see you next.
It doesn't surprise me at all. 2017, let's continue with that, because we did mention that, George St. Pierre will likely be coming back. You mentioned, he is hungry, and that's very important, because sometimes guys think, or girls think, they have the hunger to compete, but they really lost it. And we all know George lost it before that Johnny Hendricks fight. It was almost like he went through the motions. Based on your assessment, and I'm going to just remove my opinion, because obviously I've talked to George on numerous occasions, and my thoughts are going to be separate for the moment. But do you think he has that hunger again that he had long before he became the champion, to become a champion once again?
Well, by the accounts of what he's doing in the gym, even giving back in many regards to being a coach in some places. He takes in on a coach role a couple of days a week at TriStar too. So he's teaching the new generation. So I think that was one of the steps for him to, again, get a revitalized interest, passion, whatever you want to call it, for mixed martial arts. And on the other aspect was he wanted to clean up the sport, and now the sport is partnered up with USADA. So where George St. Pierre goes, so does MMA. Whether it's USADA, and who knows what's going to happen with the new venture that he's taking out. But what I was going to say is essentially it's up to him. The same thing happened, I would say, in a different regards with Ronda, where only she knows how hungry she wants it, how much she wants it. So only George will know how much he really wants it. And the main difference that Ronda showed is when you're actually in there, do you really want it? But I think George is a different aspect, because again, his mental fortitude, his biggest strong point is being able to stick to a game plan and getting a win. And he's the best at being able to stick to those points. And I think if anyone can do it, even after a 3-year layoff, it's George.
Of course, I totally agree. He's so cerebral whenever he does compete. My issue when he was, I don't ever want to see him compete again, because I think he did what he had to do for the sport. I think his legacy will be more what's going to happen outside of the octagon. But one of the things that I was thinking about, and I didn't have a chance to talk to his manager about it, or even George at the Gentleman's Expo, my concern is that he's sponsored by Under Armour, which I'm sure is an exclusive deal. And when you compete for the UFC, you have to wear Reebok. Do you think that has been resolved at all?
I don't think so, or else it would be the issue wouldn't be there. I think there's a rumor, $10 million is what his asking is. And it's not about money, but it's about principle and a little bit about money. So again, if the new ownership is able to reach a deal, I think he wants to get back in there. But at the same time, he's in a position with all the leverage in his own right that he doesn't have to return if he doesn't want to. And I agree with you. He can do what he wants to do, but I think for his own legacy, retiring at top, especially with someone like Anderson possibly staying too long, and all the other greats that have come and gone, Fedor that have come and gone, he still looks the most superhero of them all. He looks the most untouchable. He retired champion. No one retires champion. Especially not pre-USADA. Not saying him, I mean in general, all the other people.
If George gets $10 million for his next fight, Can you let him know that your schedule and my schedule has completely cleared up and we can go to Vegas?
Yes, I 100%.
Or actually, doesn't he go to Monte Carlo every so often? That's where I want to go. Can you tell him?
I'm okay with it. How about not both? Why limit yourself to half? Let's do both.
He's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill you. He's gonna kill me. All right. Well, let's move on there before we get ourselves in trouble, which is probably already too late. Yeah. For those wondering, when I make those types of statements, and I'll say it again, I'm not an MMA journalist. I never have been, never will be. I am who I am in terms of quote unquote an analyst or an insider, but I'm not a journalist. If I got to hang out with Elias to just hang out, not talk about MMA, I'm going to do it because we're going to have a good time, and it's probably going to be steak involved or some sort of really good shrimp or some sort of really good sushi. Meat, except for that meal that we had after one of the movies that we saw. I don't know what we ate there. That place downtown actually wasn't that bad.
I remember. Great company. That's what I'll say. I had great company.
That's exactly it. Okay. Nurmagomedov, Habib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson continue to be battling. I mean, Nurmagomedov says, I'll pay for you to fight me if I have to. But do you think this fight is actually going to take place in the first quarter? Do you think it's actually locked down for UFC 209? Because that's when they're saying it's done. I don't know if it's been agreed upon, but how sick is that fight if it can actually take place?
It's a great fight, and I think it's an unfortunate thing that, again, it's the argument about money. I think in many ways, Christmas will come twice if the fight ends up happening, and then obviously with Conor McGregor waiting in the wings to see what happens.
Yeah, he's not going to come back probably until after his girl has the baby. So I'm thinking, very late spring, if not early summer. Although there is talk about him showing up at the WWE at WrestleMania, so it remains to be seen if that's actually going to take place. And for those wondering if Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Conor McGregor are ever going to be competing or ever be seen in a ring, Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful.com made a great point. It'll probably be at WrestleMania, but I don't think you want to have those two guys anywhere near each other because no matter what script or what storyline you want to have there, that thing could get ugly. Imagine if that actually happens though at WrestleMania, they put those two guys in there even just for a show.
Madness. Well, then they'll just leave the rumors more so that it's going to happen for real.
Now, in terms of actually, I got some wrestling questions here because some people have been asking some questions online. Sean Ross Sapp actually wants to know who would be on Elias's MMA Survivor Series team.
I might go old school. Like, again, what I would want is, I'm cliche. I'm not cliche, rather. I'm a traditionalist. I would want Sean. Like, again, look what I'm wearing. Look what I'm wearing right here. Sean, if I'm going to go old school. And then you got to pull it off. I would want Undertaker on my side any day.
Oh, yeah. Undertaker's a badass for sure. For sure. Jimmy Van wants to know, what's your pro wrestling finishing move?
The comb knockout. I actually made my pro wrestling debut 2 years ago with top ropes, and I had a comb, and I did Superman comb knockout.
What the hell is a Superman comb knockout?
I will send you the link, and I have it for everyone so they can watch actually my pro wrestling debut.
There you go. If you guys want to see it, make sure I'll definitely retweet it at Showdown Joe and Elias. Obviously, and Elias Theodorou is I believe Elias Theodorou is now your Twitter handle, correct?
Yep, keeping it simple.
All right. I thought it was it at the Spartan at one time, or no? That's just the nickname. That's
no,
on the
I just
tag?
topped up. Yep.
Okay. So when Elias does send that out to me, we'll make sure we get it out to the masses and to our Fightful audience. Guys, if you do have any questions at any time regarding any Fightful MMA podcast, just use the hashtag Fightful MMA, and I'll be sure to get to them. There was one question that was sent my way regarding some backdrop. I guess it was something that may have happened on the show when you were on the Ultimate Fighter Nation that says, please ask him how he feels about the Tyler situation from nearly 3 years ago.
Well, that was just a complicated situation where, again, Tyler, in many ways, after the Ultimate Fighter, didn't. It is just a shame because he was young and he posted a couple of things on social media that got him in trouble. Unfortunately, to him, in regards to timing, he wasn't around. He was too busy partying after the Ultimate Fighter, so he couldn't address the issue right off the bat. It actually happened to do with. Basically, he used the N-word, and he's from New Zealand, and the Minowaro culture relates in many ways to the African-American culture, and he was actually referring to himself in that term. But when he wasn't around, it sounded worse than it actually was. Not even necessarily was, but it just got out. And you know how these things kind of go when things get out in the media. A narrative is set, and he was asked not to come back.
Fair enough. Now, in terms of culture, we all know BJ Penn is from the Hawaiian culture, born and raised in Hilo, Hawaii, or just outside of Hilo, Hawaii, to my understanding. He makes his return. This will be the final question before I let you go, because I know you're busy. We got stuff to take care of. But BJ Penn is returning to the octagon this Sunday, taking on Yair Rodriguez. Definitely a fight. Many people are like, they don't want to see this fight take place. They don't want to see BJ Penn return to the octagon. I, for one, do not want to see him return to the octagon. I think he did what he did, UFC Hall of Famer sort of thing. But your thoughts on this bout, because Yair Rodriguez is one fast dude.
Yeah, well, it's the ultimate aspect of youth versus a former champion, a former great, but the keyword former. I think in many ways BJ was the case of God-given talent, and he never really tried until he realized that Father Time eventually came after him. And now I think it's way too past that prime. I think he's no Michael Bisping. He hasn't been putting 110% for the last 5 years, 6 years. I think in many ways he's past his prime, and unfortunately, we're going to see that.
You mentioned Michael Bisping, and I know 2017 is going to be a fantastic year for you. I'm super happy about you finally returning to the octagon, but is 2017 going to be the year? Because you've always said to me that you want to progressively make your way up the contention ladder, up the contender ladder. Do you think by 2017 will be the year that you are finally going to be considered by the masses a contender at 185 pounds?
Working on it. Obviously, I got a test in front of me with Caesar, and it builds me into the idea of top 20, and then you go top 10, 15, and then you also, new contract. But what ends up happening is I'm excited. I'm excited to get back in there, kick ass, and keep on moving on. And I think this is definitely the year.
All right. Now, we do have a question from 777. It's being brought to me by Jimmy Van. I'm trying to figure out where I can get that question here. Just bear with me 1 second. But the one thing I want to ask you about Michael Bisping, there's always talk that he is returning, that he's now doing movies. He's in that new Vin Diesel movie, Triple X. It is called Triple X, right?
Yep.
Okay, thought I messed it up there for a second. Bisping, who is he going to fight next?
I would assume Yoel Romero is aspect, but then there's also the built-in storyline of 1-for-1 being with Luke Rockhold. I think Bisping will want to fight anyone other than those people. I think, and rightfully so. He's going to want to try and fight Woodley. He's going to try and fight Nick Diaz. He's going to try and make as much money out of this and be champion as long as possible. All the power to him.
Yeah, of course. And we had this conversation yesterday on the podcast with James Lynch. It's something that's been going on in mixed martial arts it's been developing slowly. And now you've got Conor McGregor, who's sort of heading all this. George St. Pierre saying, $10 million, technically $10 million a fight, but prize fighting. This is prize fighting. And at this point, when you get to a certain level, it's about the money fights. We saw Tyron Woodley trying to get all these money fights. And people are like, oh, I don't want to see him fight Nick Diaz. Well, hell, if I'm Tyron Woodley and I had to fight Stephen Thompson again, who I already competed against, he wasn't able to technically defeat me, or I can get Nick Diaz and probably get 3 or 4 times the pay. I'm going to go with Nick Diaz. What am I doing in the sport? I'm fighting, but I want to make the most money as possible. Agree or disagree with all these money fight attributes right now?
Interim belts for everyone. That's my answer. Interim belts for everyone. This is we're owned by, what's called UFC is owned by a talent agency that is wanting to build content. This is, love it or not, disagree with me or not, in many ways, this is not necessarily a sport anymore. It's a content provider. That's what they're doing. And the most amount of fights is what they're trying to sell. They have a lot of investors that they have to get their $4.2 billion back from, and they're going to try and make those money fights. So interim belts for all.
Well, the interim title drives, or the interim
tag both,
absolutely drives me up the wall. There's so many that are going around. Just call it a number. Yeah, go ahead.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, my fight is actually for the interim UFC Tough Champ belt. So interim Tough Champion.
That's right. You're absolutely correct. Do you miss? I mean, when you look back at that Ultimate Fighter, do you miss doing it, or was it just an experience, or would you do it again?
It's fun. It was fun. That's because I won the thing, but I suppose if I got knocked out, I wouldn't have appreciated it that much. But again, I got to train with like-minded knuckleheads, and my hand was raised supreme.
Well, for those that don't pay attention to what happens in the Ultimate Fighter house, you know, you're recording for 6 weeks. You're in a house with dudes. You don't have access to women for 6 weeks. Need I say more, Elias?
Well, not necessarily, because again, yourself to 50% of the population. There are probably fighters out there that probably enjoyed being locked up in there.
Point taken, my friend. Point taken. Yeah. So listen.
On that note, on that note.
No. I want to stick to that point very quickly, because it is one of the things that has been said to me on numerous occasions whenever, you know, I've known someone that's gone into the house and come out, and they just look me right in the eye and they're like, dude, 6 weeks, no women. How would you deal with it? I can't. I'll go nuts. I'd go absolutely nuts. And on top of that, with 15 other guys who are just as insane as I am right now, and I want to knock my head off. Like, people don't realize the fishbowl that you're in and the psychological warfare that you would have to go through to do that show. We may or may not have lost Elias there for a moment.
Again, that's the reason why they have that. That's the reason why they do it. They want to.
No, I think we may have lost Elias. If you could, yeah, I got you now. Go ahead.
Yep. No, what I was going to say is, again, that's the whole purpose of it, right? Again, it's the idea of they want to drive you crazy. They want to set all those barriers, and they want to have conflict. It serves its purpose. But the adage that Dana White says, do you want to be a fucking fighter? There's certain sacrifices that you have to make, and that's one of them.
Touche. Absolutely correct. All right, before I let you go, before we close off the podcast, any message you want to give out to all your fans out there?
No, what's called, truly appreciate all the support. Wait till you see all this this fun stuff that we have going out here for what's called HBN, and just it's going to be fun as hell. And I'm excited to share it and what I'm going to do next. At Elias Theodorou is where to follow my journey, and I appreciate all of you that do.
And don't forget to follow him also on Instagram, because some of those pictures are absolutely fantastic. They put a big smile on my face pretty much on the daily. I want to thank Elias Theodorou for coming on the show. You'll catch him again with me every Tuesday. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., ladies and gentlemen, 10 a.m. Eastern, another Canadian fighter, a guy that lives about 2 minutes up the road from me, Sean Pearson. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.
My pleasure.